All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to completely deconstruct that traditional one-size-fits-all corporate leadership model to equip you with a toolkit that is actually culturally agile. Look, we all know the classic image, right? The larger-than-life CEO, charging ahead, totally commanding the room. But here's the thing. In today's hyper-connected global marketplace, relying on just one single style of leadership is practically a recipe for failure. So today, we're breaking down the real science and the genuinely fascinating cultural nuances behind what actually drives successful teams across the world. Here is our roadmap for two's analysis. We're going to hit 1. Defining the great leader. 2. The level 5 myth. 3. 6 core leadership traits. 4. Regional management and culture. 5. Your daily action plan. And finally, 6. Key executive takeaways. Okay, section 1. Defining the great leader. To really get started here, we need to strip away all those empty corporate buzzwords. We literally have to open with this ultimate question. What truly makes a great leader? Asking this shifts our entire mindset. It moves us away from seeing leadership as just a fancy, formal title on a door to understanding it as fundamentally problem-solving and growth-oriented. It's really not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most effective catalyst for your team. So the crucial takeaway here is that a great leader acts like that catalyst, getting the entire team onto the exact same page and providing the sheer motivation needed to actually thrive when things get complex. It absolutely involves taking charge and solving problems boldly, but it means doing so in a way that empowers literally everyone around you to hit those collective goals. Think of it like this. You are the architect of a shared vision. Moving right along to section 2, the level 5 myth. Let's look at a gold standard that has utterly dominated executive thinking for decades now, Jim Collins' famous framework. According to his research, the absolute pinnacle of executive capability, what he calls level 5, is this wild paradoxical blend of deep personal humility and fierce professional will. The mirror/window metaphor perfectly captures this. A level 5 leader looks out the window to give all the credit for success to their team, to external factors, or honestly just plain luck. But when things go wrong, they look right in the mirror to take full personal blame. They never, ever throw their team under the bus. But we have to pivot sharply here. We need to ask if level 5 is just, a socially comforting narrative. Critics heavily suggest that the halo effect tricks us into confusing systemic market luck with brilliant individual leadership. Researcher Phil Rosenzweig makes this incredible point. When a company is financially booming, we just naturally assume its leaders are these humble, visionary geniuses. But sometimes, a company is literally just riding a massive industry tailwind. We have to be so careful not to attribute purely to the essence of a leader what might actually just be market dynamics doing the heavy lifting. Which brings us to section 3, 6 core leadership traits. If we strip away the potential biases of that halo effect, we need to rebuild your toolkit with traits that are universally effective. Regardless of where you're operating globally, cultivating these 6 core traits creates an incredibly agile foundation for engaging diverse teams. So purpose gives your team the why. Vision provides the where. Integrity builds that absolutely vital trust. Creativity generates the new methods to solve those bold problems, while motivation is the engine keeping people pushing forward even when things get really tough. But I want to look a little closer at empathy. This quote just perfectly captures how traits like empathy and vision aren't just some dry HR checklist. They are active, daily tools that help you actually understand your people and build a compelling, shared narrative. When you can genuinely imagine yourself in your employees' shoes, really feel what they are dealing with, you unlock entirely alternative problem-solving perspectives that a rigid, purely top-down manager would just completely miss. Let's dive into section 4, regional management and culture. So, does our universal leadership toolkit look exactly the same in action all around the world? Well, absolutely not. Notice how the fast-paced, high-risk American market demands aggressive, top-driven executives. But right next door, the Canadian environment strongly favors a much more measured, consensus-based approach. In the US, the culture pushes hard for short-term, quarterly shareholder value, really rewarding disruptive innovation and bold, individualized leadership. But in Canada, communication is far more subtle and diplomatic. A Canadian executive failing to consult their team before a major decision, they aren't seen as decisive, they're seen as aloof, and it seriously damages team morale. Moving across the globe, this cultural reality gets even more interesting. In Australia, practicing extreme humility isn't just some nice level 5 ideal to strive for, it's practically a mandatory survival strategy to avoid tall poppy syndrome and maintain vital teammateship. In Australian business culture, if you promote yourself too heavily or act like you're somehow above the team, you will be socially cut down, just like a tall poppy in a field. You literally have to project your professional will quietly and calmly without even a trace of status consciousness. And wow, the contrast is even starker in Europe. The flat, super egalitarian Nordic model completely clashes with the hierarchical Latin European style. This proves that displaying extreme modesty in France or Spain might actually be penalized as pure weakness. In Nordic countries, the concept of Janteloven means leaders are viewed as just another employee. Seriously, no hero worship allowed. But down in Latin Europe, there's a high power distance. Teams expect formal authority. If you act too self-effacing in those environments, you might lack the perceived status you actually need to command a complex, bureaucratic hierarchy. All right, Section 5, your daily action plan. Now that we understand these absolutely vital global nuances, let's bring it down to earth and build your personal routine. By adopting this daily habit loop, listening, setting collective goals, and committing to constant improvement, you actively hardwire learning agility right into your management style. The old school model involves a manager just making all the decisions based solely on their own knowledge. But the truly agile leader, they synthesize information, they set goals with a team, and they adapt to the environment, whether they're operating in Sydney, Paris, or Toronto. And remember, a truly effective action plan relies heavily on strategic delegation. This is what actually frees you up to manage the broader system rather than constantly micromanaging your people. If you've got the right people on the bus, you really don't need to be a strict dictator. You give them freedom, but within a set framework. This creates immense accountability and allows you as the leader to focus on the big picture environment and clear out the roadblocks in their way. Finally, Section 6, Key Executive Takeaways. Let's highlight exactly what you should be taking away from today's analysis. The overarching lesson here is that exceptional, enduring leadership requires immense cultural agility. It forces you to completely abandon that one-size-fits-all model in favor of nuanced strategies deeply tailored to your specific market. You've got to learn to balance the American drive for aggressive growth with the Canadian and European focus on long-term sustainability. You must build internal talent pipelines that prioritize character just as much as competence. And above all else, you have to adapt your communication style, whether that's the directness expected in Germany or the diplomatic consensus required in Canada. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this really provocative thought about the ultimate purpose of your entire leadership journey. Are you just chasing short-term headlines and hoping for the halo effect? Or are you utilizing deep cultural empathy and disciplined will to build an institution that will continue to thrive long, long after you've left the room? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep adapting, and I'll see you next time.